Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar. Now, let me ask you a couple of really important things. Number one, for the most part, this channel is about music, right? But when you listen to music, or even more so a particular band, do you ever stop and think about what it is about the band when you really like the band and you connect with that band? Do you ever stop and spend time and go, what is it about this band? What really connects me with this band? The next question I'm going to ask you, look, I've been doing this a while. You guys have gotten to know me a bit. I've gotten to know you guys a bit. And let's just be completely honest, okay? We all, every single one of us, has a dark side. Believe it or not, yours truly has a dark side too. I'm a really cool, nice, genuine, big-hearted guy. But like you all, I've been tempted to dance with the devil. I'm sure in your own way you have too. Now, I've been around metal bands. I've listened to metal for many, many decades. There was something special to me about the band Chimaira. Now, ironically, when Chimaira first started becoming popular, getting some movement going in the early 2000s, I was a very busy musician. I was gigging every weekend. At the time, I was help running a music store. And I also gave guitar lessons every night of the week, except for the nights I was gigging. And all day Sunday, I was a very busy man. I had a lot going on. Someday I'll do a video about that, but not on this day. Anyway, I had some students come in. This is in the very early 2000s. And they were fans of the band Chimaira. Some people might describe Chimaira as one of the new wave of American metal bands. No matter what, I really liked and like this band. I had some students bring in an album from Chimaira. And I was listening to it, and they were like, oh, show me these riffs, show me. So here I am with a guitar with standard tuning. I have a half-hour lesson. I got to teach these kids. This is before Ultimate Guitar. This is before Guitar Pro software. I'm like, I had a little CD player and a manuscript of paper and a pencil. So I had to quickly figure out what the tuning was, and I learned it was drop C tuning. Really a special tuning. Maybe one day we'll do a video on it. I had to figure out these riffs. There's some interesting stuff going on in the riffs, but I remember sitting down, figuring it out, teaching it to the students. And, you know, I kind of was so busy with my life at the time, I didn't really give Chimaira a second thought, really, for the most part. When I got back into lifting, I really connected with Chimaira. So ironically, I didn't really connect with them as a musician and as a guitar teacher, guitar player. I connected with them as a lifter. And the reason I did, especially their album, The Impossibility of Reason, the reason I did is because I learned Chimaira brought out my bad side, my dark side. Now, I don't mean this in a negative way. We all have a dark side. We all have our bad side. Now, the only other time I would feel these feelings that Chimaira brought out in me, I remember I had an incident that I go through in this video, in this interview, in 1993 when I was really being harassed and threatened by these two guys when I was out driving. And my bad side came out. Part of it was also the music I was listening to at the time, the band I was listening to. Story for another day. And boy, I have never seen two grown men that tried to be bullies drive away so fast from a guy who flipped out who was standing there with a baseball bat. In this day and age, you know, getting into fights, confronting people, it's not smart. You know, you don't want to spend time at a police station. You don't want to spend time in legal fees and being tied up in the legal system. It's just not smart. So I had a positive outlet that I let that dark side come out, and that was when I was lifting. When you are young, it's very easy to be angry. Most of the time, kids are angry and they don't even know why they're angry. They're just walking around angry. But when you're in your mid-40s, your late 40s, and you're really a competitive lifter, and you have to become this other human being to summon up that dark side, to become that person, to lift the weight that you are lifting, sometimes the music you listen to plays a very important role. That is how I really connected with Chimaira, especially their album, The Impossibility of Reason. Now, I think it might have been a combination of Mark Hunter's vocals. There was something very special to me about his vocals, his vocal ability. The guitar player, Rob Arnold, great guitar player, riff meister extraordinaire, and the amazing rhythm section of Chimaira. For whatever reason, it really connected with me. Their anger connected with me. And boy, did I ever love listening to Chimaira when I was in the gym. Now, fast forward to today, YouTube has been opening up all these wonderful doors for me, meeting people I might not have normally met. I had a wonderful interview with Rob Arnold, guitar player extraordinaire of Chimaira. Now, Rob is a great guy. He's a modest guy. He's a great guitar player on the technical end, on the riffing end, but also the fact is, when you have a band with that intensity and anger, he captures that essence in his solos. Rob and I had a fantastic chat. Rob was always super cool. Every time I messaged him or commented on his YouTube videos, he always commented back or messaged me back. We had an exceptional discussion. I'd also like to note that Rob has a new solo CD out. Yeah, it's called Magnitude. I was privileged enough to get a sneak preview. Thank you, Rob. Love it. The track Assassin is my personal favorite. It will be going in my gym playlist for sure. Amazing band. Unfortunately, they're no longer together. They did a reunion gig back in 2017, but we can hope for the future. This is my interview and discussion with the one and only Rob Arnold. Check it out. Remember, practice hard, but practice smart. And we'll see you soon. Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar. I am wired and jacked on pre-workout, my friends. Today is a very special honor today. The band Chimaira, the album The Impossibility of Reason. In my other life, when I was lifting, I did some crazy stuff. And to become this insane human being to lift the amounts that I was lifting, I had to listen to some special music. Chimaira, love that band, love the riffs, and you know what? I love the guitar player. It is my absolute honor today to have as my special guest, guitar player, riff meister extraordinaire, Rob Arnold himself. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I hope the pre-workout goes to a good cause, that this chat is a workout, or else I wouldn't want that to go to waste, you know?
Absolutely, my friend. So, Rob, let's just quickly go through the generic, your guitar beginnings. What got you into guitar? All that is. We got so much to talk about today, so.
Sure. So yeah, just kind of long story short, in third grade, there was a kid in my class with long hair that I was just kind of intrigued by. We became friends. I went to his house. He had three older brothers, all long hair, Maiden, Van Halen posters everywhere, guitar picks in the fridge, all throughout the house, in the garage, full setup, PA, drums, and everything. I was just like, whoa, I'd never seen anything like that. He sat down, he played Panama for me. And that day I went home and said to my mom, I got to start playing guitar. And that was it. Never looked back. I mean, there was a couple like summers maybe where I wasn't playing because I was doing sports, but I had an older sister who was like into 80s metal and stuff, and she'd have boyfriends come over and they'd see my guitar sitting there, and then they'd play some Metallica riff or something, and I'd get back into it, just be inspired. So just stuff like that, normal kid, but always knew that I wanted to do it. I never knew what it could become, but it took me meeting other like-minded players to see where that could go and to decide to pursue that and stuff. But yeah, music's definitely in me, and it was shown to me at an early age, like I said there, and just kept going with it. Loved it ever since.
Rob, I'm under the impression somehow that I think Metallica might be your favorite band. Is that true?
They definitely are, without a doubt. Probably. Well, Justice is my favorite record, but I think I got the Black Album first, probably like right around when it came out. I was only like 11 years old, 12 years old, something like that. And I mean, and MTV was just playing the hell out of that, Enter Sandman and everything like that. And that changed everything. And then it leads you down the path of discovering everything else,
So what is it about? I'm pretty much there with you with Injustice for All. I was there's some stuff on Ride the Lightning I like. Same thing with Master Puppets. It's between Master and Injustice, I think, for me. But what do you think of what is it about Injustice for All that does it for you?
I would say the depth and complexity of the songwriting and the overall vibe. I think it's just dark and angry. But I mean, each song are true just opuses, masterpieces. You know, I mean, Metallica has many masterpieces, but they made an effort, as you know, it's well documented, to try to step it up on that record. And the level they took it to isn't for everyone, you know, because a lot of people, more people are into fast food stuff. You know, not that Metallica really has any fast food stuff, but there's a certain level with that record that they decided to push it to, in terms of, you know, being progressive and in ways that I don't think people had heard at the time and everything. And it just really resonated with me. Every single thing about it, from the production to the lyrics, the solos. God, I mean, that's Kirk's solos on that, you know, are just rang a bell with me for sure, you know. And my style is obviously, you know, inspired by Kirk's playing and James riffing. I mean, learning that record, you want to learn how to mute and pick and arrange and put riffs together and everything like that. Learn the Injustice for All record. I mean, you could do that with any of the Metallica record and still, but for that one, that's what just sparked a ton for me.
You know, we'll get into this a bit more later, but when you're riffing with your style, okay, and I've paid attention to it, with the way you throw in some of the upstrokes, when you throw in the ups, did you get a little bit of that from that album? Like the shortest straw and stuff like that?
I'm sure I did. Yeah. You know, it wasn't intentional, I guess, but
I'm not saying it's the same. I'm just saying is that maybe like a one of the influences there where you kind of start getting that idea.
For sure. I think being able to throw in like upstrokes in certain ways, almost as accents, or sometimes as a comfortability thing or whatever, just come more so with experience. I don't think you can really describe to new players of like, oh, that'd be a different sound. An upstroke may play on just a certain note as an accent or something. That's just something that comes to you later through experience and playing.
Yeah.
So if you hear those and they sound great, then I can certainly attribute it to learning Metallica riffs.
You know, that's a you know, there's a lot to Chimaira riffing, but that's a big part of the riffing, and you've got some amazing guitar lessons on your channel, and we'll talk about your channel in a little bit. That I would encourage a lot of metal guitar players. You know, I've had to teach some of that stuff years ago to a few students.
Awesome.
Pre-YouTube. So it's like, oh, now I could just watch Rob's channel and he just breaks it down right there. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So Metallica, I am a Bay Area thrash connoisseur. So on my channel we cover all kinds of different music and whatever. But I am a Bay Area thrash connoisseur. Now, was it just Metallica for you, or did you get into the Bay Area thrash scene with the different bands?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself really a thrash fan. I mean, Megadeth and Metallica are probably the real extent of that side of things for me. But there's so much more to them, both those bands, than thrash. You know, melody and just that progressive songwriting, like I talked about and stuff. But in terms of like Exodus and Testament and that kind of stuff, you know, I like that stuff, but I never really gained a passion for it like I did with the aforementioned bands, you know, like Metallica and Megadeth.
Okay. So after Metallica and Megadeth, what were some of the other bands back in your formative years that really kind of...
Sepultura, huge, you know, Pantera. Both those bands I attribute so much to their groove. You know, had a huge impact on my playing. Metallica's groove as well. But yeah, Sepultura is huge. It's funny you said that you know, students would bring you Chimaira songs before YouTube and you'd have to figure that out. I can remember being 10, 11 years old and bringing my teacher you know, early Sepultura songs and stuff, and him being like, oh man, you know, having to figure this out. You know, he's just an older guy with a Les Paul, you know, just but he would help me. He'd figure them out, you know.
Well, I'd be stressed, man. I'm like, I've got a paid half an hour with this kid, and I'm on back with a CD player, and I'm listening to the Chimaira song. And I'm like, I have a standard tune. Thank God it wasn't a Floyd. It was a fixed bridge guitar, and I'd be like, okay, drop C. Oh my God. Okay, like I just remember how stressed out I was to have to figure it out and make something of the lesson. But
that's cool.
No, yeah. Rob, you are from Ohio.
Yes.
So when I think of Ohio, I've been to Ohio several times. part of my training when I was really into my heavy competitive lifting. I spent some time in Columbus and Cincinnati. But
Ah.
when I think of Ohio, I think of Waffle House is one of the biggest things I think of. It amazes me we don't have them up in Canada. But
Hmm.
I always remember going through Ohio, there's a Waffle House or Waffle House sign everywhere. Did any Chimaira lyrics or riffs were they ever conceived while you're eating at a Waffle House?
I suppose it's possible, because there are definitely even far more Waffle Houses further south. If you're making your way along the Carolinas,
Okay.
Georgia, into Florida, stuff like that, and there was a period back in our van and RV days, when we'd have to route ourselves and drive ourselves and all that, and food was a big thing, and Waffle Houses were great because I'm pretty sure they were 24 hours and you could just cruise right in. So I'm sure there were discussions at least sitting around at Waffle Houses about plans or certain riffs, or maybe we could do this in this song. Oh yeah, let's try that. I can't remember any specifics though.
So the Drew Carey show, at the end where he goes Ohio. That used to
I think I
irritate
know
the
of it. I've honestly never seen that. I realize Drew Carey's associated with Ohio something,
yeah.
but
And
I
the
don't know
intro
enough.
at the end, he just goes Ohio, and I don't know why that always irritated the hell out of me. And I always wanted to ask someone from Ohio, does that bother you?
No, no, not at all. What's the Hello Cleveland? Hello Cleveland. Is it Spinal Tap or is that Drew Carey? Hello Cleveland.
I think he did the Cleveland Rocks, didn't he?
Cleveland. Yeah, yeah. That sounds familiar.
So now, now we're going to start getting into this here, Rob. Being in metal bands, as we had a little chat before we started. I did the metal thing in the '90s, very early 2000s, and it's a tough grind. I think in our head, I want to try and explain this right. In our head, we have this naivety when we get into music, and it's tough. Like people really, I mean, obviously, Chimaira was an amazing band, but even like in a regional band, trying to build your way up, it was tough. And I eventually got to a point for me where I was like, look, man, I want to get my bills paid. I want to eat. It's very tough. Like, I really have always been fascinated. I've watched the Chimaira documentaries several times, including this week, getting prepared for our discussion today. Uh, you guys were just like, man, it's just the toughness, the nitty gritty, I can't imagine how many times you guys must have said, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore. Like to get through everything you guys got through. Um, uh, it's so hard to convey to young musicians now. When I see bands that stick it out and make it, I'm like, kudos to you, man. It's really. Uh, when did you guys really get hit with the reality of going, this is going to be tough, this is going to be a slog?
I don't necessarily know that we thought about it like that. I think that we welcomed that as a
Yeah.
matter of fact. I would say that it all started when Chimaira was being put together, and the mentality at that time, and this was even before me. I joined maybe like 3 months after its inception, so I'm
Yeah.
definitely an original member. But Mark Hunter, the singer, and at the time Jason Hagar, they said, who was a guitar player in a band called Ascension, who was also from the area with Matt DeVries. So that all worked itself in later and everything. So we were just some bands. Andals and I were in a band, just different bands from the Cleveland area. And Mark Hunter and Jason Hagar got together and said, "Let's do this for real." So we'd be gigging, just little clubs around the city. Me and Andals were still in high school. Guys, there was a big hardcore scene going on, and guys were playing for fun, hoping maybe something would happen. But Mark and Jason made that statement to themselves, let's do this, let's get signed. Mark said, "I have a dream. I want to be on Roadrunner Records, and we're going to do this." And so they started recruiting some other guys. My name came up because the bass player they had found at the time I had known, and he just happened to recommend me. I was just working at Pizza Hut. I wasn't really doing anything. Andals and our band wasn't really doing much anymore. And they brought me in with that mentality. And then the mentality was also that everybody's going to be here at practice 5 days a week at this time. Your job, your girlfriend, your everything comes second, because that's what it's going to take to really do this. And that mentality weeds out the weak. Only people that can commit to that and have that fortitude to do that can try to make that happen. So first of all, it takes that. Then you have to make music that people like. So we got lucky in that regard that we were doing something that for some reason people like, whether it was the groove or the riffs or the vocals or just all that, maybe the vibe that we portrayed, because we were serious and people can tell that. They can tell if it's just fun or fake, or these guys are serious and they're bringing it hard every night. They're putting everything into this. Looks like they have their shit together. They show up, we were well rehearsed. We studied all the time. We'd watch Slayer DVDs together as a band, Machine Head DVDs, look how they were doing things, just because we knew we wanted to be professional. And then just chips start falling into place. You get all of a sudden we're on Roadrunner. Yeah. All of a sudden we're on tour with Slayer. All of a sudden we're on tour with Slipknot, and it's because of choices we made. And so the how hard that was, we weren't thinking about that at the time. In hindsight, of course, man, it took a lot of effort. A lot of things had to go right. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it, but it was just that mentality that we're going to do this that led us down the path to success.
Yeah. Now we got to talk about the anger, because Chimaira is a very pissed off band. All right, and I got a kind of a roundabout, one of my Brianism stories I'm going to tell you. Where do you think the anger comes from, Rob?
Well, Mark has a special anger inside of him, and we're all really just fun, happy guys, But I would say that the anger is inspired by the angry music that we love. We go back to the Metallica, like we were talking about, from the death metal, and then the hardcore stuff, the angst in that hardcore at the time from Integrity and Earth Crisis, and just that type of stuff. That teen angst happening at the time and everything. I think that's what it came from, coupled with that's just what sounded good to us. I don't like happy sounding metal. And I like stuff that has just, I call it sometimes like an evil edge. Even though I don't consider myself like an evil guy, I like an evil edge in my metal. And if there's any hint of happiness in the riffs or something like that, it doesn't appeal to me. So I think that a lot of it just comes from that it's what we like to hear. And so that's what we produce.
So, sometimes you can connect with a certain type of music. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. It kind of involves you. The riffs in Chimaira, the drumming, Mark, we could do a section just talking about him. To me, he's an amazing vocalist. There's something in his voice. But I had messaged you, and you guys, I got to tell you, Rob was always really cool. Like anytime I'd message him or comment on his, he'd always respond or comment back. And believe me, I know with a growing YouTube channel that can get more and more difficult to do. But I asked Rob a question many months ago, and I kind of realized, I think I have a few years on these guys. Because I just kind of assumed we were the same age. But I said to him one day, I said, Mark, he reminds me of this just a little bit. There's something in his vocal about this that reminds me a little bit about this metal band from Toronto called Sacrifice. And these guys, Sacrifice, were around. Basically, they were kind of the forerunners of thrash too, especially in Canada. They kind of reunited and stuff. And Rob wrote me back and said, "Hey man, never heard of them." But anyway, listening to that band, it brought out something in me. And there's a point I'm telling you this. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. In '93, I was driving with my girlfriend at the time. Do you remember those No Fear stickers? Do you remember them? You might be too.
Of course, we were sponsored by No Fear for a long time, actually. Yeah.
I shouldn't tell you this story then. But this guy, they had a truck decaled out in that, and they started what's that called when someone follows right behind you? Tailgating me with high beams.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting mad, right? Like, I'm a nice guy, but man, like, and they're following me around. They're like threatening to hit the back of my bumper at the lights and stuff. This is like 3 a.m. So anyway, I managed to get away from them. I drop my girlfriend off, and I go back to the main road where those guys were, and I put Sacrifice on. And there was just something about the vocals and those riffs. And then I see them, I put the high beams on, I pull up behind them, and I grab a baseball bat, and I'm out chasing after them, and it just did something to me. And we're talking about that with Mark, with Chimaira, with the vocals and the riffs. It just brings out this other side of like anger and humanness in me. It's crazy. Like when I'm listening to the Impossibility of Reason in my vehicle,
and someone starts tailgating me, they're literally in mortal danger of me getting out and flipping the car over. Now, I want to stress, Rob, that's in Canada. In the States, you don't know what somebody's packing with the weapons and stuff. So in the States, I just tend to go, "What's up, dude?" So, but anyway, I
You
just
never
had
know
to,
it. Well, you
yeah,
got to remember with Mark.
caffeine.
What's that?
You got caffeine, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
You
wanted
got
to
you got
share
to
it with
remember
you.
with Mark, the guy hates everyone,
Yeah.
right? So, and what's funny, I add one more thing to that. I don't know if I mentioned this in our conversation, but Mark and Jim LaMarca, before Chimaira, were in a band called Sacrifix. Did I
Yeah.
say that? I don't know if I did, but they were in Sacrifix. So maybe when you said that, I may have thought, oh, is he talking about Sacrifix? I don't
Yeah.
know.
No sacrifice, but there's just something in those riffs and that vocal, and I mean Mark's. I saw the documentary on him too. It's very fascinating. He's a fascinating guy, but he's an amazing vocalist at what he does. It was cool to see him filling in for Lamb of God. But now, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the band, but it's kind of like Jim's almost kind of like the humorous guy, and Mark's almost like the serious guy, and maybe you're somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Totally. We all equal each other out in some way, but yeah, Jim's definitely the character of the band, and I remember seeing those guys playing around Cleveland when like I said, when Annals and I were still in high school, and I didn't know them, and I knew at that time, whoa, Mark is ferocious. That guy's awesome. I'd love to play with him. And
Yeah.
Jim had a stage presence about him, like that I could never have. Like he's just so comfortable, and loves interacting with the crowd, and as an audience member, that's impressive. Like I was like, whoa, so getting into a band with those guys was certainly cool. And they were like upperclassmen. We all went to the same high school, but they were probably seniors when I was a freshman, and so by the time I was a senior and doing the stuff, they had been out of school for a while and doing bigger, better things, bigger shows around Cleveland with their local band and stuff. So they were idols to us younger guys, and like I said, I knew there was something special about Mark back then before ever
Yeah.
meeting him.
Dude, amazing. I'm too old to be a fighter now, but like if I was a fighter or even lifting, I'd want him in my corner. Just, but now did I read properly that Mark and Jim were in a band called Skip Line and their van was jacked?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you just
They
tell?
it just one of those situations where they were doing a little 4 or 5 regional show stint, and I think maybe it was Rhode Island or something like that up there, where they parked the van after the show at the hotel, went to sleep, came out in the morning to start the next day wherever they're going, and there's just no van.
Oh my God.
So I think they continued. Maybe there was one show at the couple show. I think they borrowed gear and rode in the van, packed in with another band, and needless to say, the tour was not so much of a success.
The drop C tuning.
Yeah.
So when you listen to the dehumanizing process, when that riff kicks in at that tuning, I've always been kind of like I've never been a big drop tuning guy. I've always been standard, half step down, whole step down. Um, there's just something about that frickin' tuning with you guys. I don't know. It just gets my gut going. I'll keep saying that and saying that. I had this connection with the music. What got you to that tuning? Like how did that develop?
It's kind of as simple as this. I don't remember the exact timeline because all of a sudden we got into drop A for a minute, and I can't remember if that was before or after drop C. But at any rate, I was an E guy as well. And right before joining Chimaira, I discovered drop D, easy, just drop your sixth string, a little bit, and then you could play those bar chords. And that was what a ton of the hardcore bands from the area were doing, playing these bar chords, the power chords with just bar. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that sound. And then later in Chimaira, maybe we started in drop C, but I can just remember this moment where Mark's saying, we're going to do drop C. That's what Machine Head plays in. I hear it's the most evil tuning. It's as simple as that. So that's what we did. Now, what I'm saying is I don't remember if we went to 7 strings, because we went to 7 strings from 6s because bands like Korn, we're doing that at that time. And I think Mark said, this is what bands are doing right now. Korn, Deftones and stuff like that. Let's do that too. And that choice was as simple as that as well. So we went out and bought 7 strings and started writing the Pass Out of Existence songs. So that was cool, and the sound was cool, but I was like, oh, I'm just not comfortable on a 7 string. I don't really like this. All my
Hmm.
sweet spots are gone. Like I have to like take an extra second to translate where my boxes are and
Yeah.
stuff like that if I want to improvise.
Yeah.
Just 7 strings still to me feel bulky, and just they just don't feel the same. So then after pass out, that's when I said, I think we should tune back up. I want the riffs to get tighter and cleaner and faster and more ferocious. Let's move away from this type of stuff that we were doing with Pass Out, and let's tune up. It may have been right there that Mark said, all right, let's try drop C, or maybe we just went back to drop C and we had been doing it before Pass Out. I can't remember that exactly.
Yeah. So now, dude, the 6505. So I used to have a rig with the 6505 and the cabinet. I used to use the 6505 Plus, but I just have a little combo now, just in the event I ever go out and jam with somebody, but that's not so likely anymore. But
Cool. I see. Yeah, a couple line sixes.
no,
Vox.
those are for teaching. Yeah.
What's that bigger one? Is that a
That's a
5150?
6505 Plus.
6505. Okay, yeah.
It's a
Cool.
combo, yeah. Dude, they're awesome, man. How did you stumble onto those?
Man, I feel like we're just talking about Mark here, but it's the same thing. His rig when we started Chimaira was a 5150 block letter and a Alesis MEQ 230, like this 2-channel multi-band EQ, and I think through a Marshall cab. I forget, but anyways, he said, "This is Rob Flynn's rig. Listen to this." And
Yeah.
I was coming in with a crate half stack, and Jason, I don't know what he was coming in. He had some beat up Marshall half stack, or maybe it was like a Laney or something. I don't know, but anyways, there was no denying that Mark's rig at that time, because he was like writing songs. He was still just a singer, but he would like write songs with us, and he'd play guitar in skip line, but he knew he wasn't going to be the guitar player in Chimaira, but he would still write with us and jam with us and stuff. But I mean, his sound just crushed everybody's. It was so loud and heavy. So that's what we just continued with, and it was on. This is a funny story. It was on. We were on Ozfest in 2003. The very first show, the very first song. I had nothing. I blew a fuse on a 5150. I think it was Mark's 5150 that I was using at that show. I blew a fuse immediately. My tech went and ran. He just wasn't prepared for this. Had to run to the trailer. I'm already missing a song or two. Came back with more fuses. It kept blowing fuses. So we borrowed an amp from another guy. But a couple shows later, we were in Georgia where Peavey was or is, and the Peavey guys came out. And we got a chance to talk to him, and I told him that I had this 5150 that's blown, and they said, "I'll tell you what, let us take this with you. We'll fix it, and we'll send it to you in a few shows. And in the meantime, try out a couple of these 5152s." And they gave us brand new 5152s that day.
Wow.
So we're using these 5152s. They sound fantastic. I don't even really miss the 5150, but a month passes, I don't hear any from them. Couple of months pass, I don't hear anything from them. So I call and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on with this 5150?" And they're like, hold on a minute, hold on." And they go and they're I'm on hold for a minute. They come back and they're like, "Hey, we're sorry, we don't know what to tell you here, but we think it's gone. We just no one knows where it is." And basically that right there, with the team of guys that was working with Peavey at the time or whatever, I don't think it's the same anymore, but that right there was the moment where anything we ever needed from Peavey, we got. So we got a bunch of more 5152s. Then when the 6505s came out, they sent us a bunch of those. And then Ellefson became our rep. And we could talk about that too. But Ellefson was sending us JSXs and triple X's and different cabs to try out and stuff like that. So our relationship with Peavey was super fruitful, and it all just kind of stemmed really from them, I think, feeling bad that they lost this head, and so hey, we just got a free ride from there on out.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. And actually, Ellison's a great guy. He's been on here. He's done an interview with me before.
Yeah. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So sometimes when you're trying to bring reality to people coming up. Now you have very detailed videos, awesome videos on your channel, which we'll get to, about pedals, noise gates, all that other stuff. we like some of the stuff out now. I'm not going to mention brand names and stuff, but now like some of the stuff you need to program, you need a PhD to program some of these products out there now, and that's wonderful. I had my stage 20 years ago where I had my rack effects all linked up with MIDI, and I had this like, but you want to explain to people too, like, look, dude, when you're on stage, especially with the security and stuff, you get drunk people coming up spilling beer on your pedals, on your pedal board, stepping on your pedal board where the adapters are. you know I'm of the mindset, I don't gig anymore, but I'm of the mindset where, you know what, a few pedals, a good tube amp, and a good guitar in your fingers, that's all you need. What
Right.
is your feeling about how crazy some of the stuff is now, and what's really reality with being practical with going out and playing?
Well, I've always been a meat and potatoes guy. I agree. The
Yeah.
guitar and the amp. If you need a couple stomp boxes, that's what you do. It got to a point for Chimaira's live show where I was having to do too many simultaneous pedal changes. Like, let's say a song like Lazarus off our self-titled. To get into that solo, I'd be on the clean with a chorus on, and then to hit the solo all pretty much all at the same time, I'd have to hit my channel, hit my chorus pedal, turn on my delay, and my boost or something, to get my lead sound just to play the solo. And I was just dancing around. And that's where I read an interview with Dave Mustaine where he was using a Digitech GSP 1101, which was the first time at this time, let's call it 06 or 07, that I had really heard of a multi-effects processor. I mean, I knew that they existed, but it was the first time that it came into my thought, like, maybe I should try that. And so that became a beautiful thing where I could program all my switches into one button for each song. Fantastic. I still use that thing today, but I've realized that the technology is getting older and I need to upgrade. So I've been thinking about that. I've been watching Ola Engel's channel, which is leading to me to
Yeah.
my point, which will answer your question. And so, man, the technology for all that stuff has really come a long way, and it's getting crazy. And I've almost pulled the trigger a couple times now on. I've been looking at the Boss. I think it's the GT 1000 or something. That's now a few years old, probably like 2017 or 18 model. And their newest one, the Boss. I think it's like a GX 100, which I was really interested in. And it was simple and was going to need. It could do everything I needed to do. The reviews were crazy about its amp modeling technology, which isn't an interest of mine, but I wouldn't mind having the option. But then I started changing my mind because guys are talking about how the interface on it is from like 2000, and so the interface just hasn't kept up to date with it. And I don't want that. I don't want it to be difficult. I want it to be super easy and all that. So I agree that it's kind of become crazy, and that oftentimes stuff like that can lead to analysis paralysis, where you have so many options that you can't just commit to what you would have committed to before, which is your guitar and your amp and your pedal. Last thing about this is that in the latest Sunday with Ola, everybody on your channel who doesn't know of Ola, I'm sure you do, but check his stuff out, because his channel is the best guitar channel out there, for in terms of gear reviews and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, in his adventure, last week's episode, he goes to a club to see one of his buddies' bands or something, and he says, real amps. I like that. And it was like, okay, so even he still realizes, even though he goes through all this quad cortex, all this axe effects, everything like that, even though he demonstrates that stuff and makes cool tones from it, he knows too that there's nothing like standing in front of a full stack. There's nothing like the sound you get from a meat and potatoes rig live if you really want to bring, heavy guitar sounds.
Absolutely. And there was a phase years ago, Machine Head being one of the bands that would use the axe effects to save on the freight when they were touring.
Yeah.
For you guys, was it always you just relied on what the promoter provided when you were touring, or did you guys try and haul some of your own stuff?
Well, certainly in North America, we always brought all our own everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we would use the house PA systems, but we traveled with our own front of house engineer, our own lighting engineer, all that all the time. So our front of house engineer knew what our sound should be. He's an absolute audio genius, and he'd tune the PA for the clubs every single day, like just because he wanted us to sound good. So the clubs would get a free tuning from an audio master. But then in terms of going overseas, we always used to ship all our gear, and probably around 2005, when one of the bills just to ship our gear back was 30 grand. We were
Oh,
like, which just ate up a bunch of the profit margin and stuff like that. We were just like, all right, we got to put an end to this. So then we made one last shipment and created our European backline over there, which is what the big bands do, you know? So like I said, we'd study that stuff. So then at that point, we had a full European backline over there. So we didn't have to travel with anything except our backpacks and our suitcases when we'd go to Europe, you know? And then there are certain things that we would supplement through rental companies out there. You know, if we needed some extra cabs or if we needed, you know, just whatever, you know, there's rental companies that specialize in all that.
listen up, kids. You got a lot of wisdom and experience going on here. Um, so Rob, that incident you had with the 5150, is that, would you say that was your worst gear breakdown incident live, or was there something that happened that was worse?
Um, Without thinking, stopping to really think about it, I would say definitely, and only because of the, you know, just monumental moment that was. But getting on Ozfest at that time was just the pinnacle. You know, like there was no bigger. I mean, maybe a Metallica tour, but even still, I mean, we're on tour with Ozzy and Manson and Korn, and I mean, just the vibe. It's just the best thing ever. Playing outdoors, you know, every single day, huge crowds, metal scene booming, everything fantastic. So for the first show and the very first note, we open with "This is Power Trip."
Oh,
And I'm like, you know, like so. And then my tech just scrambling because you have to identify a blown fuse in the middle of an Ozfest set, you know, and stuff like that. And then when he finally brings it, it blows again. So it was something with like, you know, the transformer or something blowing them. And so I missed, you know, the first 3-4 songs. And so yeah, I mean, just because of that moment, that was probably my worst gear breakdown.
oh man. So you've been, as long as I've been aware of you, you've always been playing ESP guitars.
Yes.
And how did all that come about?
Well, when we signed our Roadrunner deal back, this was still we were at the tail end of getting good record deals when those existed, and part of that deal was an equipment budget. So we knew we were going to be going out to LA to record Pass Out of Existence, but we stopped at Guitar Center first and bought 4 Mesa cabs, a full brand new drum set, all new cymbals, all new cables, new basses, all this. And we were going to buy guitars too. But Mark had just been in LA and had like just a sit down with our new manager, and Stefan from the Deftones happened to be there amongst some other guys. And he said, when you come out to LA to record, let's do a song together, and I'll hook you up with the ESP guys too.
Wow.
So Mark didn't really know what that meant. But of course, the next day at practice, or when we saw him, he's like, "Yeah, Stefan said he's going to get us some guitars." We're just like, "All right, whatever that means." We don't even really know. I had never played an ESP guitar at that point. I was playing Ibanez's,
Yeah.
and so back to the Guitar Center now. We're about to buy a bunch of guitars. Mark goes, "Hold off. We can always buy new guitars in LA if we want them. Let's see what this deal is with Stefan." And long story short, we're driving out in the van. We're coming up on the West Coast. Mark calls Stefan, says, "Hey, we're going to arrive there tomorrow. You know, what that offer you made to us, or what you said about these ESP guitars, what do you think?" And he's like, "Hold on, I'll call you right back." Calls us right back and says, "All right, you got an appointment tomorrow at noon at the ESP warehouse. Here's the address," or something. So we're like, "Okay," and go in the next day, shake hands with the guys, say hello. 10 minutes later, we're just back in the warehouse. They said, "Take whatever you like." So each of us, me, Mark, Jim, and Jason Hagar at the time, each just left with 2 guitars that day. I grabbed a couple M1. No, I grabbed the Viper VB300 LTD and an M1000.
Yeah.
And on the way out, they said, "Let's talk about some custom guitars." And we were just like, "What?" You know, just like, all right, you know. And so we started working on the RA1, and Hagar had a custom at that time too, or maybe Matt replaced them by the time they were ready. I can't remember that, but anyways, it's just one of those things where thank you, Stefan, because of Stefan from the Deftones clout.
Yeah.
That happened like that. I still have to pinch myself that because dude, I knew of ESP only because of the posters on my wall with James and Kirk playing them, and I was like, man, that'd be great to play those, you know.
Yeah.
And here I am. Mhm.
It's when you've traveled a tough road too, man. You guys had some blessings too, for sure, like that. That's an
Totally.
awesome.
Totally.
So, man, I'm jacked up on caffeine, dude. I'm so jacked up.
That's okay.
Um, so it's one of the funny things about Rob too is I love Chimaira, and when I started my channel and I started an Instagram about a year ago, I've only really started working on my Instagram the past couple of months, really. But I would send Rob really funny messages or comments on his thing just to try and get his attention. But I'd be like, one of the things was I'd be like, he plays the sickest guitars, but where's the neck pickup? Like I hate middle pickups. I have no use for them. But for me, when I'm sweeping and doing some fast picking stuff, sometimes I like the neck pickup. But I remember messaging you and going, "Yeah, dude, where's the neck pickup? Hey, man, just never found a need for them. I like just having the one there." So I remember getting a kick out of that.
That's the exact answer I would have given you right now, too.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. Um, I
Teach their
want,
own.
yeah, yeah, and I wanted to ask you really quickly too, for people that ever watch the documentaries on Chimaira, um, for people that have played in bands, sometimes it's really hard to relate to people, and that's one of the good things about having YouTube channels. You can share your experience and try and help people not make the mistakes you've made. But one of the big things that came to mind when I watched both documentaries back to back was the issue of band chemistry in bands. We don't, Rob, we don't have to mention names or say anything, but band chemistry is so important, right? You could play with someone who's a wicked player, but if there's a personality thing happening, how would you emphasize to young musicians coming up how important band chemistry is?
It's infinitely more important than talent. Okay. Because just kind of like you said, if you have five, say five Steve Vais in the band, but they don't get along, it's not going to last.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, they're not going to create classic albums and shows that you'll love for years and stuff. It just won't. But a band with great chemistry that has a chemistry that can be sensed by an audience via a live show or via the DVDs, where you can, fall in love with those characters, because none of us are the best musicians. Arnold is the greatest musician by tenfold in our band in terms of his knowledge of music and theory and all that kind of stuff. Got me, Mark, Matt. We're all street players that got lucky that people like the riffs we play. But Arnold is really educated on that. So there is what I'm saying is the proof that the chemistry that we had and have that we didn't really even know that we had played a tremendous part in our success, more so than our ability to play our instruments. It propelled us, gave us the rocket fuel early on to then improve as musicians as well and become more solid songwriters and focus in, because we were given the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So, but we just made it on our good looks at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, there's a really cool documentary. It was on Netflix. It might be on Tubi now. Might be on Prime. It's called Hired Gun, and there's a section in it where they're talking about hired gun session musicians, and there's a part where Rob Zombie said, "Hey man, finding a talented person who can play the parts isn't a problem. Can I put up with this a-hole for 2 years on a bus? That's the big question." So
Exactly.
it's really, and I had this funny little series on my channel a while ago about the different personality types and why bands don't work out and they don't get along and stuff. So like you have the type A personality, so the very driven, where sometimes they tend to clash with other type A personalities, but then you have the typical the resistor, the guy that just has to be a bit difficult, just so Rob doesn't always get his way. I'm just going to be difficult for the sake of being difficult. And I actually categorized all these different personality traits in bands and how sometimes it's hard who gets along with who and who doesn't get along with who. But if you can find that balance of the personality, it is very important. And I look back at some of my band experiences, however small they may be, in more of a regional setting. My communication skills weren't the best back in the day. I just, if I had my communication skills now without all the caffeine, I probably could have done a better job at resolving some issues or But my big thing was, I often say to people, being in a band's like a relationship. In the beginning, people are always going to tell you what you want to hear to get things going. But once it gets going, maybe I had an intense personality, but I was big on people keeping band agreements. Like this was our agreement, and this is what we were going to do. And when people start to not do it, I used to get ticked off.
Well, that's integrity, and you should expect nothing less. And
Yeah,
if someone doesn't have integrity, they're not going to be easy to work with.
absolutely.
But having good character traits like that, integrity, work ethic, even down to punctuality, stuff like that. They're important when there's a group of people relying on one another to make a common goal happen.
Yeah.
So my best advice just for all young players is just have a great attitude. Because that can overcome all. When you get to a club, treat the staff, be friendly with them, be respectful of their gear and their job, and maybe that they're pissed that they're working that day. So just remember that, because it's only going to lead to good things. If you're cool, you're going to sound better. You're probably going to look better, than the alternative.
So if Rob Arnold could go back and talk to the Rob Arnold of 20 years ago, so if you right now could go back for 5 minutes and sit down with yourself 20 years ago, whatever, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, I would definitely the number one thing that comes to mind is I would say stop and smell the roses more, because I was just very, very driven. It's funny when you describe type A, I don't know those differences other than what you just said there. And I would say I was a mix of what you said. I'm very driven and focused, but also I always have to hear the other side of the coin, or I have to present the other side of the coin, which can be difficult, can be taken as constant second guessing and stuff like that. But I only have the best intentions, take it as you will, sort of thing. But I think I would tell myself, kick it a little bit more and look out at those audiences and realize, okay, you've made it here. Take a few deep breaths before you start moving to the next ledge of the mountain, or trying to, because I was always just trying to move up. We all were. And so that helped get us successful. But I'd want to look out at those big crowds again,
Yeah.
which is maybe something I'll never do again, and just be like, hey, wow, holy shit, like not many can be blessed with this. So that, and then I would probably tell myself, try to be a little more easygoing as well, because because there's no rules out there in the music game. There's just a lot of Wild West. There's a lot of just guys that don't know what they're doing, having to make big decisions.
Yeah.
A lot of in bands, there's a lot of inner turmoil because everyone thinks that their decision should be the decision that's made, or the best decision, or they know what's best. So there's a lot of clashing things like that. So I think I would try to be a little more easygoing, listen to others more. But all these are just things that everyone learns as they become older and wiser, that you can't expect your younger self to be aware of. But given the opportunity, that's what I'd say.
You know what I really admire about you guys, and guys, I'm brutally honest, but you know what I really admire about you guys that probably a lot of bands could learn from you guys?
What's that?
Well, when you left the band, it's a grind. Who knows what happened? That's kind of between you guys, but it wears on people being in that grind all the time, and different things happen, right? But you did some really cool stuff. Like it's like you've done stuff since with Jim. You've done stuff with Mark. You've listened to the Chimaira record that you weren't on. You guys seem to like, okay, we went through a lot together, but we kind of reconnected as friends again. Like our relationship as friends and that tie together is more important than all the BS.
Right.
Trying to be friends with an ex-bandmate, guys, let me tell you, it's kind of like trying to be friends with your ex.
Yeah.
How many of you can do that? Right? But I really admire that in your channel, man. Seeing that stuff, going, man, like that's cool. That speaks almost like, if not more than the music. It's like these guys value their friendship and just say, look, man, we went through some stuff, but it's all good.
It became, just in a nutshell, it just kind of became toxic in the end. A mix of egos, maybe success kind of dying off a little bit, and because bands go through waves.
Yeah.
There's certain bands that could stick that out. Machine Head and Slayer come to mind. When we were touring with Slayer, they were on a down point. We were playing House of Blues or whatever, and then when I just saw them on their farewell tour, they're just selling out arenas. So bands go through up and downs. Machine Head, like I said, is a huge example. They were open for us at a point, which is we just couldn't believe that. You know,
Yeah.
like, that's what they needed to do. Our band was on the rise. We're both on Roadrunner, so our advisors or whatever said this is what should happen. Machine Head said okay to that, and they weathered the storm, and now they're back on top. You know, and Chimaira fell off. So, but anyways, there was a lot of toxicity in the band, and it came to a point, I think, where it just wasn't fun, and guys started dropping, including myself, which I never would have thought that I could have left that band. I had far too much passion for it, and it was just too heavily rooted in every aspect, from the business to the music and everything. But it eventually came to that point, like I said, where I needed to get out, and it was ugly at the end, and I wasn't able to talk about Chimaira. No one said I wasn't able to, but I didn't want to talk about Chimaira for 5 years. I didn't want to relive that. That was my way of dealing with stress, which I've been a fortunate guy. I've never had much stress to deal with, but now all of a sudden I had all the stress, and the only way I could deal with it was just to bury it.
Yeah.
And but Chimaira was still asked all the same questions we're asked today. People wanted to know what was going on. Will we reunite? Will there be new music? All this kind of stuff. So I'm hearing all this stuff, on social media and stuff over the years, but it was the reunion finally getting back together that Jim finally started orchestrating. Hey, I'm going to try to get Mark and Rob talking again. Oh, I'm going to try to get Mark and Chris talking again. Jim and Mark started talking again, because none of us were talking to Mark for a lot of years, just the way that the cookie crumbled. But so Jim started orchestrating that, and we got together and we did it, and the weight lifted off everyone's shoulders was just tremendous. And it was easy just to reconnect for us, because we were super tight back then. You know, we were bros back then, and just that there was something got driven in between us, and it sucked. And to have that removed from us, everyone fell back in, and everyone's cool again. No,
But no
drama at all.
I don't know how many bands actually can do that, because you don't see that a lot. Like, in a story I'll tell everyone here and yourself really quickly. The last original metal band I was in was a very heavy band, very early 2000s. I was going through a very stressful time in my life, and then the money that had to go out to go into recording in the studio, doing a CD and stuff, it all imploded, and I ended up leaving. And I remember just freaking out at the main guy. He did vocals and guitar, and he was an amazing talent. I remember sending him the nastiest email, and I sent it to him, and it haunted me for years. And about 10 years later, I just wrote him. I said, dude, this has been bugging me for 10 years. I'm really sorry. I was a real dick. And he wrote me back like the next day. He said, dude, don't worry about it. And we got together for dinner and a jam like that week. Like, there's just something about the humanity of it when people can do that. I don't know. It just means a lot to me. I'm like, so I'd see your videos where you're doing stuff with Mark and you're doing stuff with Jim. And I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. You don't see a lot of former bandmates do stuff like that. So maybe in a way you're kind of a trendsetter. I don't know.
Amen. And I guarantee, your bandmate there was probably relieved to receive that message, and just to bury the hatchet, like I said, is just a gratifying feeling to get that weight off your shoulders.
I talked to him the other night. I said, dude, I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on, but if you want to plan a few gigs next summer or something, arrange something.
We're getting the band back together, man.
Well, I don't know if another band member, I don't know. I don't know if I could deal with him, but moving along though, I love your YouTube channel, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I got to be honest. It's been one of my inspirations, but it's just your production and your freaking thumbnails. Like, you'll put out these thumbnails. I'm like, I take some pride in my thumbnails. They're not bad. They've come a long way, but I'm like, how does he do this? So can you just kind of start me a little bit with like your channel? Like, how did you start? Like, like, what do you use to edit? Like, are you using Final Cut Pro 10 or what? Like, just some of the details, like how you got into that with your channel.
Well, just starting my channel was really a couple major things. It goes back to what I said, that I didn't allow myself to talk or think about Chimaira for all those years. So when I was ready to do that again, we did our reunion show in 2017, and I really started my channel in 2018, where I said, okay, I'm going to try this thing. But so I just had a flood of things I wanted to talk about, content I could make, and all that, because I hadn't been for so many years, and there were so many people that were asking about it. So I instantly had a small audience. So I was lucky for that. It wasn't just starting as someone no one had ever heard of or something, and so I knew off the bat that, okay, if I could do this, if I could start making some videos, at least some people will watch right away, and that'll maybe give me like a place to start from to get off. At the same time, I knew that I was going to be eventually releasing the solo album with Arnold, which is coming out in a week or so, and my album with my project, The Elite, which I've been working on both of those simultaneously throughout all those years. And I knew that without a record label, just being independent, that I still needed some sort of platform to let people know that those records existed. So it all just kind of came together. Okay, I could do this YouTube thing. I could talk about Chimaira. I could simultaneously build a platform so that when it's time to release these records, there are people out there that will know about it and can help spread the word and all that. So I've had a master plan since day one, and the building of the YouTube channel has been slow, but it's enough to keep it going. And I know you know what I mean, where you've planted this seed and there's a little sprout, and before you know it, blah 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 blah. I wouldn't really say that it's like bared fruit yet, but it's gonna. And the fact that I know that just drives me to keep going. And all the positivity, I'm very proud of the positivity on my channel. Everyone just seems stoked and everything. So that just keeps me going, and I'm gonna keep going. And about the productions and stuff like that, I feel that initially I felt that I had an image with Chimaira to maintain. I think Chris Pacuza and Chimaira is a fantastic graphic designer and artist, web designer, all that. Mark has a keen eye for all that, and it was them that got together and helped create all of the Chimaira artwork. What all that stuff looked like that you saw was those guys and the dudes they chose to work with and everything. So I knew, without any art or graphic design background whatsoever, that I needed to do that. I didn't want to discredit the Chimaira brand in any way by coming up with some, shitty looking thumbnails or whatever like that. So I did what you got to do, and I just started teaching myself. I just started watching courses. I just started, whatever it is, Skillshare or lynda.com or whatever. I just started teaching myself and figuring it out, asking questions, watching tons of videos, looking what other people were doing, what their thumbnails looked like. And it's just like that. And fortunately, I got fortunate that they're turning out okay and that people notice. And at the same time, it sucks because the bar is that high. Everybody's thumbnails are looking good and stuff like that. So if yours doesn't, it sticks out as not looking as good. So you got to keep it going. You got to keep reinventing. You got to keep learning. You got to keep making them better and better.
And I'd like to get more into that because, as I said, I love your channel. So I'll have some musician friends. They'll come to me and they'll say, I posted this video and I got no views. YouTube sucks. And I'm like, you posted one video? Okay. And I'll check on their, maybe they'll have their YouTube will be there for a couple of years and they'll have posted 7 videos.
Yeah.
And I just, I don't claim to be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I must have a little bit of intelligence somewhere up there. But I just look at these guys, I say, you haven't earned the right to complain to me about YouTube. Earn the right, and then we'll talk. But, what I say to people, too, is like, this makes me unique. There's only one me in the planet. There's only one Rob Arnold on the planet. Well, there might be different Rob Arnolds with the same name, but there was only one guy that's played in Chimaira, plays guitar and all that other stuff. But we all have our own individual uniqueness, and it's bringing that. I'm still finding myself with YouTube. But, I've had so many people, talented people say to me, oh, no, man, there's so many channels have been done. Why do it? I'm like, well, if you don't try, you never know, right? Like, I love doing it, but I can tell, too, maybe there's also a bit of a musician thing with you. Like, you're a musician, you're a creative guy, you create. But I get some satisfaction out of that from doing the videos and the video editing myself. Do you find that?
Totally. My favorite part is the editing. When I can turn the camera off and I'm done with that, after, because you got to plan everything out, write your outline or your script or however you're going to do it. You set up this shot, the lights, all that kind of stuff. I love when that is done. And then I bring everything into the computer and I could just veg out and edit. And that's my favorite part of it, making sure the audio is right, making sure that it looks good and learning. I'm always trying to step that up. And I just and watching other people's YouTubes, like, wow, that transition was smooth. I'll reverse engineer it. How did they do that?
Yeah,
You know, this
exactly.
idea, you know, you just, I think a lot for me too, I'll say just a little secret is that I watch I watch a lot of like fitness channels or cooking channels, you know, stuff like that. And so I'm able to bring their editing secrets or methods, not secrets, methods into this heavy metal channel that I have. And so I think it's unique to that sometimes that I'll have these certain, whatever it is, a montage or a transition or something like that, that I saw a fitness guy do, you know, in the gym or something, you know?
Yeah, no, it's dude, and you know too, like you have a lot of really good educational stuff on your channel, like um, when you talk about pedals, you know, how to use a noise gate. Like we were talking about the 5150, and I love the amp, but it's noisy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like in understanding how to use a noise gate. You know, if someone had to pick their mandatory pedals, if you're playing with any amount of overdrive, you have to have a noise gate, right? And
Yep.
I'm like you. I'm a the noise decimator kind of guy. That's my noise gate. I prefer it over the Boss noise suppressor, but that's a whole other ball of wax. But you've got some really cool instructional stuff too. Now, Rob, I'm going to pay you one of the biggest compliments as a musician that I can ever give someone. Okay,
All right.
and you know I don't kiss ass, so I'm just not the type of person. But I'm honest. Okay, so there's songs that I have connections with. You know, it could be an old Genesis song. You know, it could be some. I don't want to see the sheet music for it. I don't want to learn it on guitar. I don't want to learn it on keyboard. I don't want to know. I just want it to have that magic in my head, right? So there's been a couple of times. Sometimes what I'll do is like I'll be on one of your playlists when I'm like cooking or doing food prep or something before I go to the gym. But then you'll have these awesome videos of like, hey man, this is how you play this Chimaira riff. And it's great. I would encourage any metalhead to go and check them out. But for me, like the dehumanizing process or cleansation stuff, I'm like, dude, I don't want to know. I don't want to know how to play it. I don't want to know. And really, I have such a connection to those riffs and those songs. I don't want to know how to do it. I just don't want to know. I just want to. It's kind of like a mechanic looking under the hood of a car. You know, I just don't want to. I just don't want to go there. Do you ever
Sure.
have you ever had that with any songs?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I thought about it exactly like that until right now, but sure, there are certain songs that call me to want to try to play a riff from them, but probably more so that don't.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I talk a lot about Opeth lately.
yeah,
I absolutely love their guitar playing, their riffs, just everything they do. But like, I don't know that I could play any Opeth riffs right now, just because it
yeah,
doesn't call me to pick it up and want to try to learn that stuff. But they're what I put on all the time when I just in the background, like you were talking about, you know,
yeah.
um, doing whatever. So I would say so. Yeah, just like I said, only certain things call you. Metallica early on, I had to learn all that stuff back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, me too.
You
Yeah,
know,
no, I get. But when you
so
have that connection with certain, there's just, and that's a big compliment I'm giving you. It's like I don't want to know. I don't want to know how to play those. I just, I just like
man,
having them in my head when I go to the gym and I put it on, and there's just something about the drums, the riffs, and Mark's voice that I got to find some of my old lifting videos, and maybe try and put some Chimaira underneath to it or whatever, because that was
go
a
ahead.
big
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
my playlist. It's so weird because I didn't connect. No, I connected to it as a music teacher, but I remember at that time being so busy running a music school and gigging and playing the certain like I was so focused on my teaching, but I remember some
sure.
kids coming in with Chimaira, but I connected to it more as a lifter. So it's really kind of weird, and now here we are, but now we're talking about more of the guitar angle of it. But
I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, no, man, awesome. When I watch your videos, you seem like a really organized guy to me. Do you have OCD?
It's funny. Just my daughter the other like 2 nights ago said to me, "I think I have OCD," and I said, "Everybody's got OCD in one way or another. You know,
Yeah,
just everybody's got little quirks and stuff like that." I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'd consider myself organized, but again, I think everybody's organized in certain ways and perhaps unorganized in others. But I feel that being as organized as possible leads to as little stress as possible.
yeah,
Everybody knows when you're unorganized and shit's just shoveled or whatever like that, it can get stressful. I try to avoid stress whenever possible.
yeah.
doesn't feel good. And
No, that's a big key to life, man. You know, I've had my battles with anxiety and stress and everything. Talks for another day, but it's very important. Knowing when to avoid stress, you know, it's very important. But
avoid it
so
when you can. That's it. There's times you can't, but
exactly. So let me ask you about YouTube. So you know, you're busy with with working. You got a family. How do you fit YouTube into your schedule? Are you kind of on a routine with that? How do you do it?
for for 2 full years plus, I released a video every Sunday, and really nothing in between. Maybe once in a while I'd have 5 videos a month, maybe 6 videos a month, just depending if something came up or something, you know. But basically, my week would be about my Sunday video. You know, on Monday, well, after I'd release on Sunday, and then on Monday, it's kind of a lot of curating that video, as you know, answering comments, making sure that it's you know, as many people are aware of it as possible on the socials, you know, and that's content creation in its own, you know, just preparing social media posts and stuff like that, and then answering and interacting with those comments, and really trying to lead people back to the channel or the website or whatever, so that they can discover more, because I believe so much in the compounding of all that. um so but so starting like maybe like Tuesday, I'd try to start thinking of ideas. Sometimes the idea would be clear to me, sometimes the idea isn't there until an hour before I'm turning on the cameras, you know, like maybe I have just something general in mind. But my week was really about creating that video, curating my Patreon community, all that, which is a completely just separate content creation entity. I have to create for that as well too, to try to keep people happy over there and engaged over there. Both work together. YouTube and Patreon, they feed each other in a sense, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
their growth and all that. But I knew that I needed to put out my new solo album, Magnitude, and I couldn't find the time to work on that and finish that off, while also just doing the normal YouTube thing that I was doing. So just over the past couple months, well, probably 4 or 5 months now, I've slowed down the YouTube so that I could finish off Magnitude. And so I've just been releasing a little bit less. And, you know, as you watch the numbers, you can just see, you know, the plant wilting. So my strategy, actually, and I'm telling you this is because I've just, as another creator, I know you'll like hearing this. But so I'm like, all right, I got to conquer this somehow. I don't want the channel to die off, but I've made this commitment to finish this record. How can I do both? How can I keep the channel alive? And one day, you know, YouTube they send out idea type emails every once in a while of things you could do. And I just happened to read this thing that said, you know, try repurposing your old content into shorts. And they have a tool where you can do that. And the first one I did was actually my interview with Chris Bacuza, Everything You Love, like maybe like 32 or 33. But I didn't like the way that it like zoomed in on him to turn a 16:9 vertical, and like I had no control over exactly how I wanted. I wanted better production in that short, and all that. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna start making my own shorts. And so for over the past month, I've released a short every single day, just taking like my old videos. And again, it all comes back to what I said at the beginning of this about the compounding of all this. So when I'm releasing a short about learning down again from the Impossibility of Reason or something like that, that not only keeps views there, but it's attracting in the shorts market new viewers that then hopefully will go check out the full video. And so it's all just part of a funnel like that.
Yeah.
You know, just to keep it going. And the channel has re-blossomed without me really creating much long form content at all. Over the past month, I think I've released 2 Sunday videos, you know, and that seems to be working well. So it's not turning into that, but it's just a little like supplementation trick that now I'm going to continue with that. I'm going to go back to still releasing at least 1 video a week. I'd like to try to do more, but with family and stuff like that, it's hard. Which it sucks to even say, because you know there are lots of guys out there that are doing a couple of videos a day, and you wonder how in the world can they find the time for that, or the ideas for that, or just all that. So I'm not at that level by any means, but you know, I'm just learning every single day, refining every single day, as I'm sure you are as well. And I just still feel that I haven't I'm still way at the bottom, but I'm ready to level up. I give myself the opportunity to level up when opportunities come in, and I'm constantly striving towards that.
I find, if someone came to me and said, give me, can you give me, what's the best advice really quickly you can give me? I'd say consistency and lighting. Lighting it's still not where I want it to be, but when you watch videos with good lighting and videos with bad lighting, lighting is one of those things you can invest a lot of money in it, but it's one of those things, even with natural light, if you know how to use it. And I'm still learning and learning, but that's one of the things I find really makes a difference with videos is lighting. And again, it's being consistent. So like when I have someone come to me and go, "Oh, I posted a video and it got no views and I got no subscribers from it," I'm like, "Yeah, but you haven't posted a video in the 6 months beforehand." Like, it's a lot of work and you have to commit to it, but it's still not PhD stuff. Like consistency is part of the whole thing. I think it probably takes almost a year just to really get into the algorithm with YouTube.
For sure. And that, like I said, that production bar is high. So you can't, sure, it can happen where somebody can have some super shitty quality video that goes viral because the content's so great, but it's a mix of that. It needs to be great, engaging content that provides value to the viewer while also showing that you're willing to put time into the production so that it's just keeps up with the standard. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't need to go over the top and have whatever Hollywood production or whatever like that, but at least try to put some effort in and stuff. So hey, and I know, man, the lighting is tough too. I'm still trying to figure that out every single day, even though I've tried to get some better lights and learn. It's all about just learning it. It's knowing how to use that light, like you said, even with daylight and stuff. But even though that I've got my setup here and I got these lights, I still feel like it's different every single time I turn on the cameras, and every single time I need to make adjustments. Still, every single video is still just trying to dial it in. I don't have something that I just flip on and it's ready to go every time. I get closer to that each time, but it's always learning, always refining.
Absolutely. So you're wicked at setups, man. And I got to tell you, I have a history. I have an education in electronics, and I'll delve in it when I need to, but it's still not my thing. But I'll do it. Like if I had a student say, "Oh, if you fix the solder connection or whatever," yeah, okay, I'll do it. But I took a course from a luthier 15 years ago on how to do a setup for a fixed bridge, and of course, if you do an immaculate setup, it makes a huge difference with the guitar. I'm a Floyd Rose guy. For all my metal guitars, but I don't know why. It's just something I should learn, but I just don't want to deal with it. I'd pay someone to do them. But one of my bucket list goals is to sit down with your videos and learn how to do it myself with the Floyd Rose. But how long did it take you to learn the hang of all that stuff?
I think I said it in my first float video that it took me 20 years to, in the video I said master the Floyd, but I mean more understand the Floyd, and it's just a balancing act. And if you can figure out what you need to balance and what to counteract, movements in tension versus, string tension versus spring tension, once you can understand that through enough persistence and determination, you can get that right and learn along the way of why that's happening. I have so many haters though. I'll say that these know-it-all guys that'll be like, what a waste of time. All you need to do is this, and this, and this. Or those videos where I know you know what I'm talking about, where there'll be some guy, he's just got some method where all you got to do is tune like the middle fine tuner and then work your way out, and it just takes 5 minutes. There's all these magic tricks. I don't believe in that. I mean, the guy did it on camera and it certainly looked like it worked and he was convincing, but that doesn't work for me. And I feel like if those shortcuts really worked, videos like my float video, one of my first videos, is the most popular video on my entire channel. On a consistent basis, gets the most views every single day out of any video. So that tells me there are hundreds of guys every single day trying to learn how to manage their Floyd Rose. It's insane to me. Like there's that many people that are trying to learn. So I don't know what it is, if my drawn out explanation process is attracted to them because it gets a lot of compliments. But like I said, there's haters too, that there may be better methods out there. But
you're pretty wicked at it, man. I've seen the videos.
Thank you. But yeah, I've been a lot around, I've been obviously using Floyd's for many, many years, like so many of us have, but I've been around a lot of great techs, just, I had my strings changed. We all, Matt and I had our strings changed every single day on the road. So, multiple guitars. So I was just around that a lot. I heard a lot of different perspectives, from a lot of different techs, a lot of different luthiers, a lot of big techs from different bands that love to share information, or you could just sit around and watch them and stuff like that. So, and then, like I said, Joe, it's really just having the realization that all that kind of is with the Floyd specifically is just a balancing act. And once you can figure out the two ends of the teeter-totter there, okay, it just clicks for you. And then you just, like I said, you got a determination, and eventually it'll work out.
I think part of it for me is I'm scared to screw up one of my guitars trying it. Is that something, would you ever do that in Cleveland if you had like someone saying, dude, I'll pay you whatever you want, just sit down with me for 2 hours and teach me how to do it? Is that something you'd consider doing?
I mean, that sounds fun to me, but I kind of just don't take on anything like that anymore, because all it does is take time away from what I know I need to be doing.
Yeah.
So really that's another thing that I did was I was producing like local bands in my studio downtown before COVID hit. And I guess I did some setups for guys here and there, stuff like that. Anything really, I was taking on any work I could get.
Yeah.
Doing solos for guys' projects or guest spots, all that kind of stuff. But when I decided that, all right, I'm going to try this YouTube thing, I really haven't taken on. I cut it off clean. I haven't taken on a project or really done any collaborations or anything like that, because you just don't have the time. I don't personally. There are guys that can make so many things happen, but when it comes to juggling it, for me, if I'm doing something else, then I'm not putting the time into, growing the channel like I need to.
So I want to tell you something on that, because you're very good at doing it, and that's very admirable. I know it's on my bucket list. I got to sit down sometime with Rob's videos, and I got to learn how to do my own Floyd Rose setups. But as a guitar teacher for many years, we know that when you buy a guitar from a store, you get it off, especially if there's a Floyd. I'd have students come to me and I'd be like, it's not staying in tune. The guitar, they don't really do a setup on it, and I won't mention any store names, but anyway, I know there's been situations where they would take the guitar back to the store and say, okay, I have to get a setup done on it. I don't know if you know about this phenomenon. They pay $50 or 100, whatever it costs, and then they get it back, and I'll be like, this hasn't been set up, right? So it's kind of like sometimes if you take it to a bad mechanic, they take your money. You don't know if they've done something to your vehicle or not. A lot of that goes on. A lot of people don't know that. So for me, I'm very fussy about who I would let work on my guitars. And the luthier that used to do the setups of my guitars, he retired and he disappeared a few years ago. So it took me a while to get the trust with another guy to be my setup guy. He does great work, whatever. But it's definitely something that a lot of people aren't aware of and get taken advantage of at some music stores.
Well, that's certainly a shame that guys are taking advantage of people like that.
Yeah.
And to their credit, perhaps it was set up right, but a lot of young players with the Floyd don't understand that one small movement, if you just try to turn the fine tuner of your Floyd, or let's say if you've unlocked your nut and do anything, then all of a sudden the balancing act is thrown out. So, if like, I just want to go to drop D, that's going to have an effect on everything, a little bit. So my biggest piece of advice I have for any young player is start with a fixed bridge, because you will have problems with your Floyd that will be frustrating and will, you'll play less.
Yeah.
The way to get better at guitar is to play more and to play all the time, and you don't want to have any obstacles in the way. As a young player, keeping a guitar in tune is hard enough with a fixed bridge. Learning what in tune sounds like and all that and everything. So then to have this tremendous challenge of having to deal with a Floyd Rose 2 with no idea of what's going on in there or why, I say young guitars should stay away from that.
I watched a really awesome video you had the other day of these Evertune guitars. So one of my students, he's got a band, they're doing well, he's done touring. He actually bought my old 6505 rig from me. It was quite the rig, but
cool.
He's got some solar guitars with those types of bridges, and I'm like, oh, dude, I don't know, I'm a Floyd Rose. He's like, man, you got to try it. So I was watching your video on that the other night, going, I would like to know in person from you, you know, having us both of us been Floyd Rose guys, how do you feel about the Evertune bridges?
All right, so I just feel it's just another tool in the toolbox, and used in the right place, it's incredible. Tracking guitars, or well, I mean, for any, you can play live with it. The one drawback for me is that the vibrato isn't true. And as a Floyd player or an experienced player, you know what your vibrato should sound like and feel like, and just what when you bend to a certain note, you have certain expectations of what that note's going to be like. The Evertune just isn't as true. You can set it to a certain place where it gives you the most amount of pitch bend capability, or you can set it to where there's zero pitch bend capability. I could take a string and yank it this far off the neck and it will stay in tune because there's a mechanism in there compensating for that difference in tune. So you can set that up how you want, but even set to the furthest place, or so it has the most bendability, it's still just not quite as true. So I personally wouldn't play with it live and do my solos or anything like that. Now, just for straight riffing or whatever, like let's say Matt DeVries, he doesn't do a lot of vibrato. It is a perfect tool for him. For tracking in the studio, when you want to get those octave chords and overdubs all perfectly in tune, they will be perfectly in tune as long as it's set up right and in tune to start. There are no variables with that. It will be perfectly in tune. And so for that side of the thing, a lot of time when I was tracking magnitude out here, I'd grab my MH1000 there with the Evertune, and if I just needed some chords or whatever like that didn't have any bending or vibrato or whatever, and I just put those parts in. Then I'd grab a guitar with a Floyd to do the parts where I wanted to have vibrato and stuff. So it's just another tool in the box.
Cool.
But I think they're awesome.
Okay. I might venture into that territory. Not sure yet. So you have a new album out. Your solo album, Magnitude. I was fortunate enough to get a sneak preview. Assassin is my favorite track.
Awesome.
But again, it's with the riffs, of course, obviously, I think of Chimaira too when I hear the riffs because you're playing on them. But man, it just gets me pumped up. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did that come about? Who played on it? And I'd really like to tell people where they can get it.
Sure. So it's been a long time in the making. Right after I left Chimaira, in my last show was December 30th of 2011, and then in all of 2012 I started building my recording studio, and at the same time I was writing the majority of the songs for Magnitude. And my end goal was to build this recording studio, teach myself how to record. I mean, I had a general knowledge at that point just because I had been in studios for the past decade with Chimaira, and I was always the guy that was sitting there in the control room the entire time asking questions and studying. So I had a pretty good idea, but still, you don't know till you get into it. And after years of experience, I finally felt ready to put this record out. But backing back up to that, I wrote these songs and built the studio, knowing that one day I would be able to produce and mix and release this album myself from my own studio without the help of a label. Same with the Elite project, and that was just my end goal. Why I got into that. Now along the way, I ran out of money, and had to start recording local bands. And so that put off my own projects, and I could only chip away at them little by little. So it took me 10 years of working in the studio and slowly chipping away at my album to be able to put it out. But I wouldn't have changed anything about it because those 10 years were invaluable. All that I learned working with local bands and, reading and watching YouTube videos and practicing and gaining the experience that I did, where had I put the record out in 2013, it wouldn't sound near like it did now that I put it out in 2022. But again, backing up there, I recorded wrote these songs in 2012. I sent them to Arnold, which is Chimaira's drummer, not at the time, but for many
wicked
years.
Drummer, man. He's wicked. He's wicked.
Yeah, dude. So he's considered part of the classic lineup. And we've been friends since we were 15 years old. Went to high school together, played in bands together before Chimaira. So I just knew I wanted him to play on it, and that's what people wanted too. People have been asking for a long time. Everybody loves Implements of Destruction and The Heart of It All and those type of things. And people love the vocals too, but I'd hear all the time, oh, I just want some instrumental stuff. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make an instrumental record. And of course, now I'm getting hate comments like, where are the vocals? Be better with vocals and stuff, you know, so you can't please everybody. You never can. But anyways, I'm glad I did this, got it out of the way, and made this instrumental record. Arnold's tracked it, you know, and then his health started declining after that, but I got him in his prime still. Okay. And he knocked it out of the park. And yeah, so took me 10 years to put it all together, just retracking riffs here and there, because I wrote the songs, but slowly I'd retrack the riffs over all these years, popping in solos here and there, different ideas I'd have for overdubs and things like that. Mix the record. Yeah, it just came out December 9th. And people can find it everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. Go to robarnoldworld.com, you know, to find a link there for to get yourself a CD, or links to any of those streaming networks, like I just streaming platforms, like I just mentioned.
Awesome, Rob. It has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully, maybe we can reconnect again and do another one of these down the road. That would be awesome.
All right. Yeah.
So there you go, guys. Go check out Rob's new solo album, Magnitude. Check it out on Spotify. You're going to have links all over here in the description box as well, and in the video. Remember, practice hard, but practice smart. And we'll see you soon.
I like that.